Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Mordy and Glory video, and today guys I want to ask and answer one simple question. Is free war gear a good thing? So for those of you that don't know, GW has started a trend in the competitive scene where they have been giving out free war gear to a lot of units. Now Imperial Guard are one of the factions that I think have been given the most free war gear, but there are other factions they've started doing it to as well. As I often theorise, I think that GW tends to use the Imperial Guard as a bit of a guinea pig, and then they roll things out to other factions. Now, for example, with the Death Guard, Plague Marines now get all of their war gear for free. Doesn't matter what you give them, you can give them blight launchers, plasma guns, plasma pistols, all sorts of crazy gear. It doesn't matter, it's all free. And like I said, this is a big thing in the Guard at the moment. So, for example, your infantry squads get just free war gear. You want a las cannon? It's free. You want every sergeant in your army to have a plasma pistol and a power sword? It's free, go ahead. You want to have plasma guns, melter guns on every single squad? Go for it. You want your command squads to all come with a free flag, medic, voxcaster? Go for it. And a sniper rifle even. Those veterans, just give them free sniper rifles and even free heavy weapons. Every officer comes out of officer school and gets given their certificate and a power sword. Everyone in the Guard is getting some sort of free war gear. They've even extended this to some vehicles. So for example, Sentinels now, both the Scout Sentinel and the Armored Sentinel, just get free war gear. You want a multi-laser? Well, you're an idiot. You might as well be taking a las cannon instead. And it's a bit of a weird trend. And interestingly, it's not the first time we've seen this in Warhammer 40k, but we'll circle back round to that point near the end of the video. But let's take a look at the sort of implications. What are the pros and cons of having free war gear? So the benefits of free war gear are that, well, simply it makes list building really easy. I mean, you don't need to worry about one squad costing 50 points, the next squad costing 70 points, and one squad having weird numbers like a 71 point squad and a 73 point squad. It doesn't matter, everyone just costs 60 points. Makes it very easy when it comes to list building now. Just slap in 10 squads of infantry. That's 600 points. That's easy enough to do. And so you tend to find that free war gear does make building your list really easy. It also makes it pretty easy when it comes to pick what units to give what war gear. I mean, at the end of the day, if you have to pick between a grenade launcher, which is a substandard option, and a melter gun, which is one of the better options you can take, one of the best special weapons in the game for Imperial Guard, and for other factions as well, you're just always going to take that melter gun. Makes it very easy to decide. No longer do you need to agonise, oh, well, is that melter gun going to earn its points back? It doesn't matter. The melter gun is free, essentially. It's not a problem. If it misses every game, it doesn't matter. It's essentially a free upgrade. And so it does make the list building process and the playing process easier as well. Now, what do I mean by the playing process? Well, if every single squad has just been given the best upgrades, every single squad in the Imperial Guard army has got a plasma gun or a melter gun and a las cannon, and every sergeant's got a plasma pistol and a power sword, it makes it very easy to work out what you're doing during the game. It's homogeneous. It's one of the things I actually talk about when building a list is you don't want to have one squad with unique war gear, another squad with unique war gear, and another unit with unique war gear. You don't want that because it means you're constantly having to make lots of individual battlefield decisions. Oh, which models do I move from this squad and which models do I move from the other squad might be two totally different answers. So not only does it mean building lists is quicker, it means you're playing quicker as well. It means I know every single time I'm going to remove the rifleman based on Imperial Guard secondary. The last guy that's going to die every single time is going to be the voxcaster. And I know what every single squad's going to have. Every single squad's going to have that heavy bolter. It's going to have that plasma gun. It's going to have that plasma pistol power sword. It's going to have that voxcaster. It makes it very easy when I'm picking models out of my collection to throw into the case, to take down to the club, to go to the tournament. It certainly makes things simpler. It certainly makes things easier. But on the other hand, it also can make things a little bit more difficult. It can make things a little frustrating when it comes to building a list. Ironically, it actually tends to mean that my lists don't add up to nice equal points. You would think that if everything was capped at an easy sort of 60, 40, 100 points, that everything is easy to build a list, right? It should always round out to an even top number. You should always be able to get 2k on the nose. Well, actually, I tend to find that I get to the end of my list building process and I've always got 20 points or 15 points left to spend, and I physically have nothing to spend it on. I can't buy anything with it. I've bought upgrades for my tanks. I've bought, you know, every character that I can get. It's 15 points. What can I spend it on? Can I upgrade that infantry squad? No, I can't. That infantry squad is a set amount. So actually, I tend to find it's been very frustrating when I've been building lists recently, and I found it not only when playing with my Imperial Guard, when I've recently been building lists with my Death Guard, I've just been like, I seem to be going into all of my games 10 or 20 points under, and it's very frustrating. Now, it's not so bad with the Guard because you can always slap a heavy stubber on something, you can always slap a Stormbolter on something, But it is a frustration when you're playing something like Infantry Guard. You just find it a lot more difficult. What I used to like about being able to have nuance when it came to building my lists was that I could tweak the list to how I wanted it. So I would be able to take some infantry squads that were cheaper, maybe even bare bones. And the advantage of that is that I knew those were going to be my sacrificial squads or my backfield objective holding squads. Whereas those squads that I decided to layer upgrade points onto meant that, and I could tailor them, meant that I would be able to push forward with those squads. So I find that you have often, strangely, got several points left over. I also frankly think it takes a lot of the fun out of building a list. I mean, you're totally de-incentivized to take any kind of sort of fluffy loadout. I mean, that sounds crazy. Like, oh, all your war gear is free. Why wouldn't you just take whatever you want? Because if everything's free, naturally, I'm going to go and take the best thing every single time. And I'm going to feel like an idiot if I'm not taking the best thing every single time. If I rock up to a battle and half my infantry squads have got grenade launchers and autocannons, I'm just hamstringing myself. I'm just handicapping myself. Whereas I know that I should be turning up with plasma guns and las cannons and heavy bolters. And if you want an example of this really playing out, go and look at one of my battle reports. I recently did one where it was a White Dwarf style battle report where I took my old school Mordians, and a lot of my old school Mordians, they're metal models, so they're equipped with just fairly, well, not as good weapons. So you have got like grenade launchers and autocannons in there. And I got absolutely smashed, guys. I got absolutely smashed. And I can attribute a big part of that being down to the fact that I just hadn't taken the best war gear. And, you know, Guard might be doing better now. I might have clawed our way up to that sort of 48, 50% win rate. But that's not due to the fact that we've got all this great unit variety. That's because everyone is now just taking the best stuff. So it tends to make the variety of an army and the variety of faction and the list building process much more boring. It's like, oh, well, why wouldn't I just take the best stuff? Well, you would. You'd be an idiot if you took anything different. So that's one of the main gripes I would say I have with free war gears. It just feels like it's meant to provide Guard players just with this incentive. Do what you want. It's free. It's not going to impact you. And the reality of the situation is that it means that it actually makes things boring because you're always going to take the best stuff. The other problem with free war gear, I would say, is that it means that you can't take units cheaper than you want to. You have to take an infantry squad at 60 points. And quite honestly, and I did a recent poll on one of my live streams, and you know what, guys, I'd be really interested to know what you guys think. But I did a poll on my live stream, and I said, what would you rather have? A 60-point infantry squad where all the war gear is free, and you get a las cannon, and a plasma gun, and a plasma pistol, and a power sword. Or a 40-point squad, but to take that las cannon, that plasma gun, that power sword, and that plasma pistol would mean that the squad costs 70 points. So what would you rather have, the flat 60 or that flexibility? And straight away, everyone's like 40-point squad, 40-point squad. We did a vote on it, and it was just a total landslide. I think out of like 50, 60 votes that we got in the poll, the vast majority of people said they wanted that 40-point squad because they want the flexibility. Sometimes you just want your infantry squad to be sitting around, holding objectives, being a screen, and you don't want all the war gear. However, I do think that it is entirely a matter of perspective, and it depends on what kind of army you're going to be running. So, for example, when I'm running my pure infantry guard, getting all that free war gear is really, really nice. It makes the list building process super easy, and it means that I'm able to get all the best war gear on my infantry. Normally, if I'd be buying those lance cannons and everything separately, I'd be looking at 90 points a squad. Now I'm paying 60 points. So when it comes to playing my pure infantry, I love the free war gear. But when I'm playing my hybrid guard, it's a little bit annoying. Now, what's interesting is that if you had infantry squads pointed lower, and then when you loaded all the upgrades onto them, they came out to 60 points, I think both parties would be happy. Those mech guard players, those armored guard players who just want bare bones squads to hold objectives and get in the way, they want the 40-point ones. And for those of us that want to be able to take as many infantry with as many upgrades as possible, that's where you have the 60-point infantry squad. So realistically, I think the best approach is for GW at this point to go, okay, fully loaded up an infantry squad is going to cost 60, but without any upgrades, it's going to cost 40. And that is the beauty of the point system. It allows you to achieve that nuance, and it allows you to please more than one type of playstyle. Now, overall, do I think free Wargear has been a good thing or a bad thing for the Imperial Guard? Well, I can unequivocally say it's been a good thing. I mean, overall, it's been a buff. The fact that our officers and our sentinels have basically stayed the same points, but now they all get free upgrades is really, really good. And I think it'd be remiss of me just to focus only on the infantry squad. There's a lot of free Wargear floating around out there, and it really has made a big difference. I mean, I do notice it when I'm running around and all of my officers have got like bolt guns and stuff now. I get loads of extra shots out of them. I do notice it when I'm running a sentinel now, which last game would have had a multi-laser, and this game's got a las cannon. You know, last game it did nothing. This game it's picking off an aggressor. It's taking down half of a baby knight. So you definitely do notice it, and I can say from a gameplay, from a competitiveness point of view, all this free Wargear has been a definite buff. I suppose the gripes I have with free Wargear have nothing to do with the tabletop. It actually comes down to a little bit of frustration when it comes to building the list. It's just not as fun. I don't know about you guys, but I used to spend hours concocting all sorts of crazy lists and combinations. Sometimes I'd build World War I themed armies, sometimes I'd build pure infantry hordes, sometimes I'd go all mechanized and armoured, and I still do that to a certain degree, but I have to admit, some of the joy of being able to really tailor and nuance the list has gone. It's almost too streamlined at this point, and I know it's kind of arrogant for me to say, because I know there'll be a lot of newer players that'll be saying, oh, I love the more streamlined process, and that's good, and exactly that's a good thing it's done if it's made it easier for newer players to build the list. But as a little bit of an old longbeard, it's like, I like tailoring my list. I like having a couple of points left over and maybe buying a bolt gun for one guy, or upgrading one person's power sword to a power fist. I like that, and I feel a lot of that is kind of gone. So, I don't know what you guys think, but that's generally my thoughts on what I feel about free Wargear. I don't think it's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing from a competitive. I think it depends on what you're talking about. And so, from a competitive point of view, it's great. But from a fun point of view, it's a little bit boring. Now, I did mention I was going to circle back round to this point, but I want to refer to older editions, and specifically I want to refer to 7th edition. Now, at the end of 7th edition, GW did this whole free Wargear stuff, but they really dialed it up to 11. It was getting to the point where Space Marine armies were able to take free Rhinos and Razorbacks. Literally, you were having 2,000 point games that were actually one person turning up with 3,000 plus points, because 1,000 points of those were free Rhinos and Razorbacks. It was pretty insane. It was a slippery slope, to be sure. You also had situations where you had AdMech, where if the AdMech player took half their army as Skitarii, half their army as Adeptus Mechanicus Servitors, and then a Knight, they got all of their Wargear free. And again, it was the equivalent of someone turning up to a 2,000 point game. Well, technically at the time it was an 1850 point game. That was the standard, but you know, I'm relating it to nowadays times. So you had an 1850 point game where someone was turning up with almost 3,000 points worth of free Wargear. And it was unbalanced. It wasn't great. You know, you had Necrons who could, every time a warrior died, they just came back. That was a formation. Didn't even matter if the squad was wiped out. It just came back, as far as I remember. It was pretty crazy. So, for me, I suppose I have a little bit of, well, for lack of a better term, a little bit of PTSD. You know, I have not particularly fond memories of free Wargear. My attitude towards them has certainly been coloured, because I remember what it was like when GW started giving free Wargear out in other editions, and I do not want that to happen going into the end of 9th edition and start of 10th edition. In fact, 7th edition, what you've got to remember, guys, is things have got so bad in 7th edition that GW almost failed. They literally almost went under, they almost collapsed, and the only thing that saved them was the hard reset of 8th, and this reset of all this free Wargear and everything. I guess there's been a few times over the last edition or so when GW has displayed behaviour reminiscent of old editions like 7, and I have warned of it being a problem, and people said, well, it's only a little change, but then it's just GW dipping its toe in the water to see if they can get away with it, and before you know it, you've had a slippery slope. So I think that's my worry with this whole free Wargear thing, and I really hope that we don't see a situation in 10th where everyone just gets free Wargear all the time. I also hope we don't see it at the end of 9th. I think what would be very demoralising to me as a guard player is we get to the end of 9th, everyone's getting free Wargear, we only just get our codex, and then because it's all gone wacky again, just like in 7th, they have to do a hard reset, and suddenly this guard codex I've literally waited 5 years for gets about 6 months of gameplay time because they broke the game again, just like they did in 7th. There's a lot of 9th edition things that are similar to 7th edition, boys. That's all I'm saying. So I know that was a little bit of a tangent, a little bit of a rant at the end, but it's just something that I've been through before, and I just wanted to share it with you guys so that you guys know why I'm looking a gift horse in a mouth. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. And if you've really enjoyed today's video, then consider becoming a channel member or Patreon supporter. And I just want to take a moment to say a thank you to all of our latest Patreons and channel members. So a big thank you to Crispy, Gunner NWP, Apathetic 11B, Cap Bryce, Greg Shimmin, B Keith, Mr. Derp, Jared Kirkland, Gizzy376, Jacob Dale, Matt Wright, Anthony Papachio, and Timmy the Elf for becoming channel members. Thank you guys for doing your part. I also want to say a thank you to the Patreon supporters. So a big thank you to Cadian4, Dominic Griffin, Frost Den, James Currell, Zed Sylvia 51, Brian Jones, Kevin Morgan, Marshall, and Ven Diesel. Thank you guys for your ongoing support on Patreon. Now last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal heartfelt thank you to all of my top tier Patreon supporters. These are the War Masters. And quite frankly guys, I know I say this every time, but it is true. These are the people that have gone above and beyond when it comes to supporting my channel, and they're just all fantastic people. So if you've got this far in the video, I want you to give a big 07 down in the comment section for Navy Veteran, Philip French, Ross Miller, Tekwall, Alex Dengal, John Stubbs, Nicholas Walsh, Swordfish Trombone, Diesel Fox, Tom Sutton, and of course, August Barney. Thank you guys for your very generous support. It truly is appreciated. I hope you've all enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching, and as always, I'll see you guys next time.